YouTube 2016 was where things started to get really spicy. And you know what happens when things get too spicy? It leads to everyone having hot, fiery diarrhea, which is where we're gonna go. We're going into YouTube 2016, a hot, fiery pit of diarrhea. So get a cold drink, some triple ply, and call sick into work, because this one's gonna be rough. This year was the year of YouTube drama. You had Drama Alert blasting through the internet, making controversial waves. You had veganism taking off by the fruity hands of Freely the Banana Girl and the rough, baby-disliking hands of Vegan Gains. You had Nicole Arbor versus Matthew Santora and Grade A Under A. You had the React World Fine Bros drama, the SoFlo Facebook H3H3 drama, the Leafy is Here Tommy MC drama, and the H3H3 versus Leafy drama. You had the Basherverse drama, the fall of Tobuscus, the lawsuit between Bold's Guy and H3H3. There was the Keemstar content cop made by iDubbbz, which sort of spawned a Keemstar versus Pyrocynical drama. And then that involved also Leafy is Here and Grade A Under A jumping into the fight. You had T. Martin's CSGO Lotto gambling drama, which led to a terrible apology video. You had the Marina Joyce conspiracy, the FouseyTube Ricegum fake fight, and FouseyTube drama. You had the Leafy is Here content comp, and then Leafy's response to that content comp, which resulted in a content deputy video being made on him. You had the Joey Salads H3H3 drama. You had the Zoe Burger nudity versus YouTube drama, and the baited podcast and its fall. There was a lot of drama this year, like so much drama. I don't even think Triple Ply is gonna cut it for this drama. I think someone's gonna need to get some paper towels or something. I don't know what I'm even saying anymore. Just move on, okay? Let's just get out of here. In January and February of 2016, people were starting to lose their cool over false copyright claims. During January of that year, the channel I Hate Everything was terminated, only to be brought back later that month due to false strikes being put on the channel. I Hate Everything had to contact his own network in order to have them contact YouTube to solve the issue. Hypothetically, if he didn't have this network working with him, then he wouldn't have had the issue solved in the first place. It is a concern that if a smaller channel were to have this happen to them, it would be less talked about and therefore probably something that YouTube wouldn't care about. People were starting to get really fed up with these false claims and strikes, and they really wanted for there to be some kind of system put in place to help protect creators who were wanting to use things under fair use, and that wasn't happening yet, so people were pretty pissed off. There was also a double standard going on at this time that also pissed people off, and that was the treatment of commentary channels versus reaction and prank channels on the platform. People didn't like how commentary channels were being targeted with DMCA claims, despite reaction channels like Jinx completely ripping off people's content, and despite endless prank channels always breaking the community guidelines. Tons of other channels were getting demonetized, for example Channel Awesome, aka the Nostalgia Critic, for just reviewing movies, and not actually breaking any of the terms of service on YouTube, being given strikes, being given copyright claims where they would be completely demonetized, and it was incredibly infuriating because they played to the fair use rules and nobody else seemed to be. Eventually, prank and react channels would be targeted, but not by YouTube at first. Nope, it would be by YouTubers. Yes, YouTubers were responding and criticizing to these terrible prank channels and content-ripping reaction channels who seemed to be given a free pass by YouTube and their unassuming eyes. The prank channels always had some kind of inappropriate prank that broke the community guidelines, and on top of that, reaction channels would actually rip way too much content and basically repost other people's content to monetize. Many commentary channels wanted YouTube to deal with the other channels, like reaction channels and prank channels, who were breaking the terms of service. And eventually, YouTube did notice these trashy channels. This, although a good thing, was still indicative of a problem, and that was that to get YouTube to notice and fix an issue on their platform, you would need to make a lot of noise. You would need to be very angry, loud, outraged, and you would have to talk really quite a lot on YouTube and Twitter to get them to do anything. With a lot of loud, angry fans telling YouTube to fix the problem, there really is no going back after that point, and YouTube will usually do something about the situation. You'll notice that the only way to get YouTube to do something outside of its norm is to have some kind of bad PR going on. If there's bad PR for YouTube, it really does respond quickly. Outside of that, yeah, there's no dice. The abuse of the copyright claim system in 2016 had hit its peak, pushing many people to recognize that YouTube had a huge issue with false copyright claims being put on videos. Many videos, often in the commentary community, were being claimed by various copyright holders, and the money from these videos would go to the copyright holders instead of the YouTubers who had made the videos in the first place. If a copyright claim is made incorrectly, then a YouTuber facing this claim can request for a manual review to have the claim appealed, but it does take time. As a result of this delay, YouTubers would often lose a lot of money through having these false claims put on their videos. You see, during the first couple of days of a video being uploaded, that's when most subscribers are going to end up watching it. So it kind of is a problem when your videos are getting claimed left and right, and every time you upload, you lose the money. Even when videos fall under fair use, it doesn't stop copyright claims or strikes from being placed onto them. So whenever this does happen, it is quite disheartening and oftentimes scary for creators, especially when they put their entire livelihoods into YouTube. To explain the difference between a copyright claim and a copyright strike, a copyright claim, also known as a content ID claim, is a claim that can be made when YouTube's automated system finds a video with similar or the same footage from a copyright holder. The copyright holder is then notified of the video that uses its content, and it's up to them to review if this content is being ripped or if it's under fair use. If the video falls under copyright infringement, the user can claim the video. If they copyright claim the video, there will be no negative effect to the YouTube channel. But whoever claims this video will get all the money intended for the channel owner. The copyright holder can also place ads on the video to generate more revenue, and they can restrict the video from being viewed in certain countries or regions. The copyright holder in some cases may choose to take no action, but they usually will, especially in the case of it being a TV network or music distributor. Also, in many cases, these companies can hire people to manually search through YouTube and find videos with their content in them. So just because YouTube's Content ID system doesn't notice you, it doesn't mean you won't get copyright claimed in future if you're misusing content, or if your content contains other people's content in it. Now for copyright strikes, which are issued when a copyright holder issues a DMCA takedown for a video. A DMCA takedown is much worse than a copyright claim. A takedown is issued to a creator when they upload something that they do not own the rights to. This can be a song, TV show, movie, or re-upload of someone else's YouTube video. The copyright holder has the right to remove the creator's content from YouTube altogether, which means it's blocked everywhere, and the ability to generate any further revenue is completely shut down. You will receive a copyright strike on your channel as a result of one of these takedowns, and a copyright strike will adversely affect your channel. If you receive a copyright strike, you will not be able to monetize your videos or live stream from your account. If you get 3 strikes on your channel, then you're out. Your channel's terminated, and it's game over, Buster. But luckily, an individual who is facing a copyright strike will be able to refute the strike if they find that it's been falsely made on their channel, and if their content falls within fair use. Users will have to request that YouTube manually review the video in question, just like they do with copyright claims, and if it falls under fair use, the strike should be removed and your video will be completely back up and running. If the appeal fails and the strike remains, on the bright side, it'll only last 3 months. But if you get more than 1 strike in that 3-month time period, say 3, then it's over for you. Game over. The good news is you can only get 1 strike per YouTube video as well, so if only one of your videos breaks the rules, then again, you'll only get 1 strike. But if you have multiple videos breaking the rules, then you're gonna have a problem. Of course, there are also exceptions when it comes to YouTube's manual review system. Sometimes there are a few mistakes made, especially when it comes to appealing things like strikes. Now, mistakes do happen, and there are cases of people who have lost their channels and have to fight to get them back. But in a lot of cases, strikes are a little bit more difficult to get than claims. A lot of the time, the big companies, they'll claim your videos. When you break the community guidelines, that's usually when you get a strike. Now, this sounds very sneaky, and I'm not too sure when this was happening, but I do remember YouTubers actually talking about when their videos would get copyright claimed. They would be claimed until all the money on those videos ran dry, the views kind of slowed down to a crawl, and then when that would happen, they would face a copyright strike on the video to get the video taken down. Now, if that's the case, that's pretty sneaky work, but I can't recall when this was happening, so it doesn't matter. Back to the topic at hand. During 2016, people were being claimed left and right, and when people weren't being claimed, they were being struck. This issue actually wasn't exclusive to 2016. You see, YouTube had always had an issue with false claims and strikes being put on YouTube videos, and it still is happening to this day. It comes with the territory of being on YouTube, especially for commentary and reaction channels. Whether these claims are made by fellow YouTubers or by large companies, it's incredibly unfortunate to see the exploitation of the fair use content on the website. Sure, fair use is easy to kind of go a little too far with and say everything's fair use, but there are a lot of forms of content on YouTube that do fall under fair use. And I don't really know if YouTube will ever really fix this issue, especially when it comes to companies claiming videos. I think the only way that something like this has a chance of being repaired is if we add greater consequence to false claims being put on videos, but again, I don't know if that will ever happen. YouTube has always tried to keep from being involved in these disputes between copyright holders and YouTubers because they don't want to face legal consequences for taking sides and potentially endorsing copyright infringement. YouTube cannot give legal advice or be the decider of what is and isn't fair use, because that is up to a court of law. And sure, they can appeal videos that they believe fall under fair use, but there are limitations to them being able to stop companies from claiming content. From what I can see, YouTube doesn't really want to be on either side of the argument for copyright infringement, claims, and takedowns, because they get paid either way. YouTube just wants copyright holders and users to figure things out for themselves. The only thing YouTube wants to assure is that they can maintain a basic system to detect content, so they don't get sued, and so that they can provide a system to refute claims and takedowns, so they don't get sued. And also so they keep some semblance of a creator base, because honestly, it would fall apart pretty quick on YouTube if they didn't have any way to fight back against false claims and takedowns. From around 2015 to 2016, YouTube also had the creation of the Trending tab for their platform. This tab is supposed to be designed in a way that promotes hot new content that viewers may find enjoyable. But the problem was, and still is to this day, that the Trending tab has been overwhelmingly packed with traditional media from big brands, TV shows, and movie trailers instead of content from YouTubers and original works. This would always prove to be a problem for many creators, a lot of them outraged with the amount of media sources that were being put on the Trending tab as opposed to small creators that the tab was supposed to be somewhat at least intended for. This issue grew so much that creators would begin to analyze the data from the Trending tab to find out the exact amount of media outlets that were overwhelmingly promoted on the Trending page instead of these YouTubers that were supposedly supposed to be equally treated on the Trending page. For whatever reason, there is an overwhelming amount of media on the YouTube Trending tab that is more mainstream TV talk show-esque type content instead of content from actual YouTubers. Quick note, YouTube actually did replace their Trending tab with this thing called the Explore tab. Technically, the Trending tab is hidden inside the Explore tab now. They did this in about 2020, and on top of that, they also stated that they were going to try and increase the amount of creator-based content on the Trending tab / Explore tab, which is why I think they made the modification in the first place. And to be fair, there is a fair amount of creator-based content that I see on there, but again, there is a lot of mainstream media stuff, so it is a little bit weird, but it seems to be kind of in the favor of YouTubers now. Ah, yes. Okay, YouTube heroes. Okay, this one brings a tear of joy to my eye. If Satan's left butt cheek could make a program for YouTube, it would be this program. Okay, so if you don't know what YouTube Heroes is, then let me explain. In 2016, YouTube had the idea of releasing a program called YouTube Heroes, where people could volunteer to help improve the platform. They would do things by adding captions or subtitles to videos, and help answer questions that users had in forum pages. These YouTube Heroes would get access to a specialty dashboard, and they would get to be part of this cool community full of other YouTube heroes. There apparently would be exclusive workshops, video chats, and eventually, if you were a good little hero, you would get to unlock something known as super tools. Oh yeah, and those super tools, one of them allows you to mass flag videos. Now, before we go any further, we do need to understand how the flagging system on YouTube works to understand what this mass flagging of videos entails. Under every YouTube video, there is an ability to flag it for a number of issues, all of which pertain to the video breaking community guidelines. When a video is flagged, it will be held for review, where a real employee of YouTube will then go through and check to make sure there are no problems with the video. If the video does not break community guidelines, nothing happens. The video stays up and everything's good. But if it does break the community guidelines, the channel hosting the video will get a strike, and the video will likely be removed. Remember, 3 strikes and you're out. There has been a history on YouTube of videos being mass flagged falsely, even when the video fits within community guidelines, because some people really just don't like certain YouTubers and they want to get back at them by flagging their videos. With enough flagging, sometimes YouTube will age restrict a video, or remove the content without looking at the video itself, or without looking at the context that it holds. They remove this content likely because they think there must be something horribly wrong with the video and they just can't recognize what that horribly wrong thing is. Now, flagging videos is not an inherently bad thing. Flagging can help keep illegal content off of the site, but at the same time, it's a tool on the platform that can often be misused. So you can imagine how shocking it must have been to hear that if you level up in this YouTube Heroes program, you can be given this easily manipulatable tool that can help you mass flag videos. There was also talk of a reward system being put into place for these YouTube heroes, implying that there was a potential risk for people being incentivized to mass flag videos. To most YouTubers and users of YouTube, this idea sounded daunting to say the least. It was like YouTube was begging, just begging, for random people to level up in this program and then mass flag some videos. A lot of people talked about this program horrified, and most of the platform was completely opposed to the idea of YouTube Heroes because it wasn't what people wanted. People didn't want YouTube Heroes. People wanted unjust copyright claims and strikes to be lessened. People wanted the community guidelines to not be as subjective as they were, and people wanted to not have to worry about a Google employee messing up their revenue by deleting videos or demonetizing content. People didn't want YouTube Heroes. It was like completely out of left field and didn't feel like it was needed at all to help fix the problems YouTube was facing. Now again, when it comes to flagging content on YouTube, it doesn't automatically remove the content. The flagging system is used to just notify a team of YouTube employees to review that content. But if that team of employees isn't aware of certain subject matter or context that makes a video fall under the community guidelines, then there could be a problem. YouTube employees, although easy to dehumanize, are human, and humans do make mistakes. Sometimes they will make the mistake of striking down channels that do not break the community guidelines. And I'm assuming that an increase in flagged videos will only increase these likely mistakes that some of them can make. Especially if an increase in flagged videos means that employees will have to work faster and skip important factors when it comes to assessing these videos, in order to make their jobs get done of an efficient rate. And all of this could increase the likelihood that maybe they'll make even more mistakes when it comes to accidentally striking content that doesn't break community guidelines. A program like YouTube Heroes would just increase the amount of videos getting flagged, and this would again result in a higher percentage of those videos being subject to YouTube's employees, who can again make mistakes. This is why I believe that we need to do the exact opposite thing to make YouTube function more efficiently. Instead, we need to do a better job of explaining the community guidelines in a more clear-cut, less subjective way, so that content creators don't make as many mistakes when making videos. That way, less videos will break the community guidelines, meaning that less of them will need to be flagged. And remember, it's best if YouTube has as few videos flagged as possible. Well, that sounds ridiculous. Why would you say that? Why? Because if we have less flagged videos, we will have a decrease in unjust video removals, less mistakes made by YouTube employees, less freaking out on Twitter, less bad PR for YouTube, and less work for YouTube's employees. If there are less videos being flagged, other tasks can take priority, and YouTube can focus its efforts on implementing things that will make the platform function even more optimally. YouTube employees will be more available to better manage things like copyright claims and DMCA takedowns because they won't be focused on the video flagging as much. Now, some people did try to defend the idea of YouTube Heroes because not all of the ideas in YouTube Heroes were a bad idea. In fact, some of them are pretty good. YouTube Heroes outlined that people could help with video translations and informing users on certain questions they had, which would likely increase the efficiency of the platform and make things overall more enjoyable for users. But the issue here was the whole mass flagging videos thing. Nobody wanted that. Many YouTubers already had recognized that the flagging and review systems within YouTube were dysfunctional to say the least. People didn't want more flagging, they wanted more options for appealing claims and having their original works protected under fair use. This was why a huge amount of people hated the idea of YouTube Heroes, especially when the initial explanation of the program was as vague as it was. If YouTube had explained everything in full detail, then perhaps more people would have been on board with the program, but unfortunately it wasn't well explained, and even if it was, it still didn't really solve any of the problems YouTubers were facing at the time. Many people perceived this as a sort of taunt from YouTube with how unhelpful the program would be at protecting content creation, and as a result, YouTube Heroes didn't last. But the disappearance of YouTube Heroes was not instantaneous. The program lasted from September of 2016 to August of 2017, and was then renamed to YouTube Contributors, with the exact same criteria and color scheme. Then in October of 2017, the color scheme was changed to a sort of depressed blue, and only by May of 2018 would YouTube finally remove the flagging and video reporting from its list of criteria for YouTube Heroes/contributors. To this day, the program remains in its more docile form on YouTube, being what it should have been this whole time, a voluntary help center. Yeah, YouTube Contributors/Heroes is literally right now basically just a help center. It's literally designed so that people can answer questions in multiple languages, assist people in the YouTube music community, and help with making informative videos that also are supposed to assist people in a number of languages. They also may still be helping with the video translations and subtitles as well. Overall, that was YouTube Heroes. 2016 also marked a terrible time for monetization. YouTube had begun shifting towards family-friendly content, which affected monetization on a lot of YouTube channels. Dozens of content creators like Philip DeFranco and Jesse Ridgway, who we'll be talking about in a future episode by the way, were noticing their content was being demonetized, and people really weren't quite certain as to why. Many people assumed something had changed in YouTube's automated system to make it react more negatively towards certain channels, but people still weren't really quite certain as to why. People talked about being demonetized, but also about their view counts dropping. PewDiePie even talked about his. He reported that originally he was getting 30% of his traffic from YouTube's suggested feed, and after the change, he was getting less than 1% of his traffic from YouTube's suggested feed. PewDiePie then jokingly said he would delete his channel, and this, combined with other YouTubers freaking out at YouTube, resulted in YouTube releasing a statement. The statement literally just said, "Hey, we didn't do anything." And they kind of skidded around people's questions they had about the algorithm, which made many people very suspicious about what was really going on. A lot of people had suspected that YouTube just made some secret changes to their system and didn't talk to anybody about it. And as a result, people were being dinged as not fit for monetization, and their content was not being recommended properly to their subscribers. Many grew to further distrust YouTube, not just because of the demonetization and the recommendation issues, but for YouTube not actually explaining itself. A lot of YouTubers were also questioning if the countless hours they had put into being full-time YouTubers was worth it anymore. Many individuals would work hard scripting, editing, researching, and putting their time into creating content for their subscribers, only for it to now count for just about nothing, no views, and no money. Dozens of channels were being demonetized for their less advertiser-friendly content, and this again further pushed creators to the conclusion that their creations were no longer being respected by YouTube. Unfortunately, this would only be the beginning for what people know now as the adpocalypse, a time when advertisers were pulling away from YouTube due to its various controversies, and a time when YouTube would be pulling monetary support from various channels that it no longer deemed appropriate. This led to many big-time YouTubers taking breaks from making YouTube videos. The new changes to the platform had started to negatively affect not just people's view counts, and not just their income, but their mental health as well. Many creators faced burnout in the wake of these new 2016 changes, feeling that they were no longer satisfied with the content they were creating, nor appreciated by YouTube. The platform that YouTubers had grown to know and love was seemingly falling apart right before their very eyes, no longer putting creators before advertisers and instead leaving creators who made the platform as great as it was to drown and fizzle out in a sea of demonetization, no views, and mental sadness. YouTube had changed. This was also the year of the 2016 presidential election, meaning memes, right-wing content, left-wing content, social justice warriors, anti-social justice warriors, social justice warrior content and anti-social justice warrior content, social justice warriors versus anti-social justice warriors. It was crazy, guys. There were so many memes, so many public freakouts, so many triggered social justice warriors, so many Karens, so many everythings. It was the most amazing thing in, at the time, my 16 years of life. It was actually the best thing I had ever seen. I mean, why wouldn't you have this happen? Look at this. You got two geese going at it for the presidency, alright? It was hilarious. No one can ever say that it wasn't funny, alright? Honestly, I know we like to split hairs a lot when it comes to politics, and I know they're a very touchy subject in general. I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe, but I'm just saying. We had two geese going for the presidency, guys. It was hilarious. We had two geese. It was the best. God, I miss those days. 2017 was a continuation of the adpocalypse, a time when advertisers pulled themselves from YouTube, and as a result, YouTube went haywire in an attempt at salvaging its PR. YouTube did this mainly by censoring and demonetizing YouTube channels. But why did this actually happen? What happened to have contributed to the adpocalypse in 2017? Well, in February of 2017, PewDiePie, yes, the king of YouTube, made some jokes about a historical figure who looked a little like this, and then he paid a couple of guys on Fiverr, known as the Funny Guys, to hold up a sign saying that, I don't know if I can say this on the internet. Will I go to jail for this? I don't know, but whatever. To hold up a sign a little bit like this. As a result of this controversy, the Funny Guys were banned from Fiverr, and then they went onto YouTube and asked for help from PewDiePie, and then they started a Patreon, and that Patreon currently doesn't have any money on it, so I don't know what happened. I don't know where they went, but they did post in January of 2020 that they would be coming back, and still haven't really posted anything else, so I think they're kind of laying dormant right now. They're probably doing other stuff. This controversy also resulted in PewDiePie's YouTube Red series, Scare PewDiePie, being cancelled, meaning that we only would get one season of that good, spooky, scary stuff, and the rest would go and hit the YouTube dumpster. Now, obviously, PewDiePie was just making a joke, and it's up to you if you find that joke funny or not. Honestly, like, some people weren't into it, and other people thought it was hilarious. But, the media kind of took this, and they kind of, spun this whole situation out of proportion, and connotated PewDiePie with basically being, a spiral arm guy. One of those, not a zestful individual, if you get what I'm saying here. Now, on top of that, there was also a video of Chief Keef that someone made with more, outdated music, something that probably wouldn't fly in this day and age, and that also contributed to the situation. And then, in May of 2017, Kendall Jenner also starred in a Pepsi commercial that was not very well received, and that was said to have devalued the issue of police brutality, so that also was a problem. And this combination of things, or maybe it was just PewDiePie, kind of caused a little bit of some whiplash in there, In response to some or all of these controversies, a bunch of companies and the UK government pulled advertising from YouTube, which obviously resulted in even more of a freakout from YouTube, because they really don't like losing money. Some of the brands were PepsiCo, Starbucks, Verizon, Walmart. I mean, you name it, it was probably getting pulled from YouTube at the time. By the summer of 2017, advertisers had dwindled insanely, and the only channels that seemed to be getting ads put on them were the family channels. Yes, family-friendly channels were able to sustain themselves during this time. But outside of that, a lot of content creators struggled. Many content creators joked about their net worth going down for not being family-friendly, and all of this pushed smaller creators to leave the site, having been discouraged from creating content for the platform, and its more unstable and chaotic environment. Many content creators who stayed changed and or deleted their old videos, titles, and thumbnails as to not be demonetized. And some added more advertiser-friendly content to their channels as well. There was also the accusation of YouTube applying some favoritism to the more late-night talk show TV station-run channels of YouTube, supplying them with ads while the content creators on the platform struggled. The adpocalypse would further worsen in November of 2017, with YouTube Kids and its many sick and twisted videos at the time being exposed to the public. This exposure also resulted in the termination of the disgusting display of humanity known as Toy Freaks, which was a family-run channel that seemed to fetishize young girls. Once this controversy broke out, YouTube responded, removing thousands of these inappropriate videos and terminating channels such as Toy Freaks, Cobwebs and Tiaras, and many more. You might be wondering how the terms of service and community guidelines changed over this whole adpocalypse situation, but interestingly, YouTube didn't really need to change the writing of their terms of service to allow for different forms of demonetization and channel removal, as silly as that might sound, because they were already kind of designed to be able to do that with the terms of service they already had. The terms of service and community guidelines don't actually have a lot to do in general with what is and isn't okay to have for monetized content. It mainly pertains more to things that are content that are inappropriate for the site in general. Demonetized content is a little bit of a gray zone on YouTube. You can have content that's completely fair use and on top of that completely follows community guidelines, but perhaps the subject matter is not advertiser friendly and therefore it will not be monetized. There are circumstances that perpetuate there to be a level of demonetization even when your videos follow fair use and community guidelines, and that's just part of having certain more fringe content online. The real reason YouTube was making so many changes in 2017 towards ads and family-friendly channels was actually just in response to getting bad PR and losing advertisers. It had very little to do with any changes made in the terms of service or community guidelines. Another reason for demonetization occurring at this time could have been some system changes that YouTube may not have disclosed to, their audiences. You'll notice this. Whenever there's a controversy occurring on YouTube, they will make sure that there is a change to how they treat their content as a quote-unquote response. Whenever a controversy arises, YouTube will act out in a more expeditious kind of manner to try and save themselves from losing even more money and advertisers when advertisers start pulling out. And this is actually a very interesting situation for YouTubers, because the community guidelines in terms of service, although cut and dry with what they state, can also be applied in a number of ways to almost bend to the yearly goals of the platform. And this is why, at times, YouTube will remove content even though it technically once followed their community guidelines, but no longer does. They change rules all the time on YouTube. The site is constantly evolving in certain ways to maintain being advertiser-friendly. This is a horrifying prospect to anyone using the platform with the view of gaining monetary incentive or to create their own community using less monetizable personalities and content, but it is great for YouTube because they don't really need to change their terms of service and they don't really need to change their community guidelines all the time to fit the new narrative of the year. It's quite an interesting situation because the community guidelines are actually not supposed to be subjective, but they seem to always evolve alongside cultural changes throughout the years. So this is why a lot of the comedy back in 2005 is no longer considered comedy anymore and is considered hateful content or inappropriate content. It's because YouTube wants to keep up to date with societal changes and not be remaining in 2005 while everyone else is moving into the 2018s. As much as some people resent this, it's also a fault of society in general where things over time do change. 2017 also had its share of drama. We had Anthony Padilla quitting Smosh, Jeffree Star apologizing for God knows what, Kim Kardashian joining YouTube, Daddy05 being exposed, and Jake Paul making a diss track on everyone, I guess? As well as YouTubers like Joy Sparkle and Onision being exposed. Oh, and the YouTuber Repsion actually had his channel terminated for about 10 hours before it was reinstated. At this time, things were a little bit chaotic, not just in respects to YouTuber on YouTuber drama, but in respects to YouTube on YouTuber drama, where things would happen, the automated system would go a little wonka-donk, and then things would kind of level out a little bit, and then things would happen crazily again. It was just a little bit of a mess, and people couldn't really coordinate well with what was going on the platform and what would happen next. Everything was really a big question mark. 2017 was also the starting point for another gate, this one of the pineapple and cheese variety. I call it pizzazz gâteau, even though that's not French because I don't know French. I can't actually talk about this gate, because if I do, the Canadian FBI might be at my door, and that would not be good. So, I'm going to leave this up to you, my friends, to further deep dive into this subject if you are ever so interested. It was very interesting. So, my apologies for that. Now, I will explain this quickly. It was very much mainstream media sources versus conspiracy theory YouTubers. And the interesting thing is that I theorize this actually was the point where when YouTube deleted a lot of these conspiracy theory YouTubers for misinformation, I noticed this was also a time when BitChute had first started out, another alternative YouTube website, and they all flocked over to there. BitChute got a huge boost from this conspiracy, from what I can tell. That's what I'm assuming based off of the timeline. It would make sense that this is one of the main conspiracy theories that perpetuated people to end up going from YouTube to BitChute. If you're ever interested in learning a little bit more about BitChute, by the way, I do have a video on my channel talking a little bit about it. In 2017, people would also begin to post videos criticizing the YouTube algorithm and its many flaws. Some would go so far as to say the YouTube algorithm was broken. And no, it was not actually broken, of course, but its function had just changed over the years to favor what many would call content spitting. Instead of new, creative, original, almost random videos popping up in your recommended sidebar, you would instead usually find ones that had similar subject matter to the video you were watching, or to a channel you were subscribed to. A lot of what you are recommended on the YouTube sidebar, or even on the YouTube main homepage in general, is content from channels that you are already subscribed to, or subject matter that is similar to what you already are watching. This means that in general, it's harder to break into different types of content on YouTube by using their recommendations. And also, it's more difficult for people to fall down rabbit holes and discover new exciting forms of content on the platform. A lot of channels that use certain language and talk about less monetizable subject matter seem to be at greater risk for not being recommended by YouTube, but also topics that are more rare on YouTube that a lot of people do not talk about can either do really well on the platform or horribly, because YouTube doesn't really know if you're gonna like the content or not. So there is some level of randomness that occurs with video recommendations and people finding new content. It's not like it never happens, it's just a little bit more difficult to occur at times, especially if you're constantly clicking on the same types of videos in your recommended feeds. Sometimes if you do not click on a lot of these videos, or you refresh your history, or you delete your cache, or you start marking for channels to not be recommended to you, you'll start getting new content, but sometimes it can be problematic and you'll just keep getting recommended the same stuff. Smaller channels with less than 1,000 subscribers may also have a harder time being noticed because recommendations usually relate to videos that already have a high interaction rate and are put out by popular creators with larger subscriber bases. It's a bit more difficult for a small creator to put out a unique video and have it get noticed, especially if YouTube's recommendations gear themselves towards promoting content that is already well known to viewers. Videos that have the same subject matter as popular themes are more likely to be recommended because YouTube thinks that's what viewers enjoy. Meaning, it's much less likely that you will be suggested random or unrelated forms of content in general, and content from channels that you do not really know. YouTube thinks that you probably won't like the content that it promotes to you if it's not something you've already been enjoying in the past. YouTube's algorithm thinks that if it starts promoting random things to you, like a nail polish review or something like that, when you're used to building birdhouses, that you won't like it. It will always be increasingly more difficult to have original content noticed as opposed to content that is common and trendy on YouTube. This is why a lot of people do commentary videos on popular topics and follow YouTube trends. It's what pulls in the views. More people are likely to click on your video if it already relates to a topic that people are already interested in. It's an interesting dilemma. one that may provoke a slight issue. You see, if small content creators post only trendy content that is similar to what other popular YouTubers are posting, then they might have a higher chance of being noticed, but there is also more of a chance of that same content being put on the platform, and that may make it harder for your video that looks the same as everybody else's to be noticed. It's like you're drowning in a sea of the same content. What's the likelihood that someone's going to pick your video, even if it is favorable by the algorithm? How can you tell one cup of water apart from the other when they both look the same? People also may grow tired of this type of content, and again, you'll have to switch to something new. This can lead to you falling into a pattern of posting cookie-cutout content that follows trends. A lot of people do tend to follow trends on YouTube, and to compensate for this content being completely generic and overdone, you'll usually need another way of keeping people interested in your channel. So in a way, whether your content is completely new and original, or overblown and done by everybody else, you're going to need to find a way to entertain your audience. Just because content is original or overblown doesn't mean that it's going to make or break you. It's all about how you act. It's all about what you present. It's all about a new perspective that you can give to your viewers. It's about being unique. You need to find something that's going to make you stand out compared to everybody else, whether your content is the same as everybody else's or fresh and new. Whether it be your personality, opinion, skills, or unique ideas, having something that helps to define who you are as a person can work wonders in appealing to viewers on YouTube. The reality is that no matter what content you make, if you're perceived as boring or generic, you might be hard to notice and easy to replace. Outside of content creation, it's also oftentimes difficult to figure out the balance with being popular online and sticking to your convictions. A lot of people usually forego their personality traits and opinions that are relatively unpopular when it comes to creating YouTube videos, and this can be for a number of reasons. Maybe the individual running the channel is self-conscious or worried about what people will think of them for what they say. And if they are a little bit more controversial of an individual, maybe they won't want to show that side of themselves on YouTube. It's especially difficult to think of being an open book online, especially when you notice how easy it is to be canceled in the current climate of YouTube and the internet as a whole. The internet does have this notion where if you're on the internet, you're on it forever. If you post something to the internet, it's there. It doesn't matter how hard you try and scrub the internet, it'll be there. It's always there. And this makes people very, very paranoid as to what they should and shouldn't post on the internet, which is pretty understandable. Many people have managed to somehow end their entire careers on YouTube with just one YouTube video. This is why I believe that a lot of YouTubers can end up coming off as somewhat boring and uninteresting to their viewers. They oftentimes don't really have much to say, but they're also worried that if they say something out of line, they might screw themselves over. And some people are actually just really boring people, by the way. I mean, YouTube's kind of hit that dime a dozen platform where you can literally be as boring as a bucket of bolts and somehow manage to have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. It really doesn't take that much of a personality to perpetuate good content, which in a sense is why YouTube is such a mixed bag of tricks. It can be that you're a really boring person, but your content's really on par. Or it can be that you're a really boring person, but you always post a video every 2 times a day or once a day. Or it can be that you're a really unique person and your content sucks. Overall, YouTube is a rough climate to try and manage in, whether your content is original, trendy, controversial, or unprovocative. You never know what's going to happen on a platform like YouTube. You can't tell off the bat what's going to happen to your content, if you're going to be well liked, if you're going to be hated, if you're going to not get any subscribers, or if you're going to get a lot of subscribers, if you're going to get a lot of money and become monetized, or if you won't get any money and you'll never get monetized. Nobody knows. It's completely up to you to carve your own path on the platform that is YouTube, despite it having its limitations in this day and age. Developing a following of people can be a difficult endeavor for some, and it can be as easy as a slice of cake for others. When it comes to YouTube's algorithmic recommendations, though, I have a hypothetical solution that may make it easier to navigate content on the site. So here it is. We need 2 interchangeable algorithms, potentially in the Google or YouTube account settings, that users can pick between. Algorithm 1 is the algorithm that most people assume is how YouTube is currently running, where YouTube will recommend videos from channels that the user is already subscribed to, and content that is similar to what a user is already viewing, with similar tags and similar concepts. And then there's algorithm 2, which is a theoretical opposite to what we currently have. In your recommended video section, you could run into random channels and random content of all kinds without the limitation of what YouTube thinks you'll like. There are no consistent tags, there are no consistent thumbnails, there are no consistent video subjects, there's nothing consistent. It's completely inconsistent, and that's what would be consistent about it. It's that it's completely random. It could literally be a random generator that just pulls videos from the ether of YouTube without assessing tags or titles. The videos could have any kind of view counts from channels with any kind of subscriber counts, monetized or not. YouTube could just pull random videos and show random videos in your sidebar without assessing any information about the videos being recommended. I believe this is the easiest way to get the best of both worlds when it comes to viewing content on YouTube and being recommended content on YouTube. This can keep YouTube interesting for viewers who want to deep dive and go through content rabbit holes like they used to, without being limited by their YouTube account recommendations. Overall, 2017 absolutely sucked butts for YouTube, but it still had its ups, particularly with retro games. Cuphead, Sonic Mania, Wonder Boy, Stardew Valley, all of these amazing games were coming out in 2017 and running rampant on YouTube, motivating gamers and content creators to make songs, animations, and let's plays of the content. I would say that Cuphead took the cake for 2017 being one of the most popular games, not only for its colorful take on rubber hose style art, but its entertaining storyline and overall fun gameplay. It really motivated a lot of people to have some fun throughout the year, and I think it was kind of a nice touch despite all the trouble that everyone went through. Things would be better in 2018 though, right? And that concludes episode 3 of the history of YouTube. I'll be seeing you next week with episode 4. If you don't want to wait and you want to see the full series now, it is all on my Patreon. Consider checking me out on there, as well as liking and subscribing and doing all that trash.